morning, Innsmouth. Don't adjust that dial. Keep those fingers away from any toggles. We are 665.66 UHMR Chemrat Radio, bringing you the truth from the lowest sludge lakes of the sump to the highest sleaze clubs of the spire. Shake out those cobwebs, slam back a red squig. It's time to seize what's left of third shift.
Thanks for that, Gubbo. Gotta say, it's a eerily silent night without a ganger in sight. Our sun panel is only flickering every other minute. Make sure you got that trunk with that heavy slugger in it. Had to say, fellas, today was a good day.
It has been quite a bloody week, with the Hive joining Marky in a collective breath today as the Innsmouth fried chaos murder spree seems to have paused. The Arbites were able to contain the cult, trapping them in the Bastion of Lost Mirrors near Armageddon Memorial Park on sublevel 12.
With nearly 480 dead at the hands of the rampaging cultists over the last 2 days, the Arbites seem to be setting in for potential siege.
We are broadcasting tonight from the old weapon manufactorum of Clan Lex Oron on sublevel 281. I don't know about you guys, but I always wondered what happened to them. Anyway, I'm the last few Lasbalts when you're cornered by a Carnifex Goblin King, and joining me tonight is our ever sharp-eyed, never raisin-faced Scout Sniper, Marky.
Yeah, buddy. I was actually a pretty decent shot, not gonna
lie. With a raisin on your face or without?
Depends.
Okay.
Depends how humid it is.
Bringing in the heavy support and those truly titanic guns is Beast.
So.
Looking a bit more like two ratlings in a commissar's coat and shouting something about logistics and supply lines, it's Kev.
Yeah.
How's that logistics supply line working out for you, Kev?
Well, I have food. I don't know about you guys.
Are we eating paper this week?
Underhive Auxilia don't know that they got a huge warehouse that, stuff keeps getting stolen from it and they don't know how. I'm not going to disclose that information of how.
That's a bummer.
We're eating pretty good
bummer.
too.
Oh, yeah. That's a bummer.
I mean, you always got to remember you got fried rat, blackened rat, boiled rat,
sump rat, stew,
shrimp, sump lobster, sump gumbo,
rat gumbo,
sump fajitas,
rat jambalaya, rat fajitas,
sump beaties. What was that? Sump watch how you get that sump beaties.
Sump chimichanga.
That's what happens when you collect so many sugar crystals at the bottom of the sump water.
Oh my god!
What's that shit called? Chrono from Snowpiercer?
Like literally,
acid.
What's that shit called from Snowpiercer?
It's like battery acid.
It's shit.
No, it's not. It's from the machines. The byproduct.
I thought it was human waste.
No, that's the roach things.
Oh,
food cubes. The food cubes.
Suspension.
I was like,
Chrono.
I thought he froze.
I was like, is Ryan dead?
I thought he froze.
Chrono is a street drug sold aboard Snowpiercer on the black market. The drug is manufactured from suspension drugs used in medicine for those put to sleep in the drawers. That's Chrono from the series, not from the movie.
Oh,
anyway,
they change it. Oh well.
Slow-mo. Yeah, it's Chronol.
That shit was
slow-mo.
Cool.
Yeah, that'd be.
We're gonna have to have
slow-mo.
That movie made me want to do drugs.
Yeah, right.
Like that made
you're like
drugs look awesome.
More drugs.
we do.
That movie made me want to do a lot of things.
Like most movies get doing drugs like pretty wrong.
Yeah.
Some movies get it pretty right, but some movies get it pretty wrong.
Right.
But that one just made it look cool.
Hellraiser.
I'm pretty sure what you were getting at, Marky, was we're going to have to do another Hive episode at some point.
Talking about like all the new drugs and hangout spots.
Yeah, we got some
lore.
stuff.
Yeah.
Can't wait for that.
Updates.
Yeah. Updates.
Yeah. So this is our
episode 1.
This is our first episode on the Astra Militarum. We are going to jump into the Astra Militarum, also known as the Imperial Guard, or formerly known as the Imperial Guard.
I'm sorry?
The organization formerly known as Imperial Guard.
I'm sorry?
It's just a symbol. It's just a skull with the wings.
It's just
organization
the winged skull.
formerly known as the Imperial Guard.
Well, formally.
So the Astra Militarum and the Imperial Guard are used interchangeably. The words can be used either way.
You goddamn right. Don't you ever disrespect it like that?
While this episode isn't a series on the history of the Imperium or the Great Crusade, we will be covering a lot of those foundational things as they apply kind of to the Imperial Guard's history just as much as the Imperium as a whole. We were talking about this in our earlier production meeting tonight. There's actually a lot of information in the Astra Militarum and in the Astra Militarum's past that is very, very connected to just general Imperial history.
They are as old as the Imperium. Their foundation dates back to the beginning.
Cavemen?
No, not cavemen, but the beginning of the Imperium.
This is the first. The
Yeah,
first
but
and
just-
only club people.
First and only club people. So
I don't know what
we're
he's getting on
definitely.
about.
It's fine. He's making an Ogren joke. It's all I can think of. We will cover the Unification Wars, the Space Marine Legions, the Primarchs, and the Great Crusade in future series. Probably looking at like season 2. Get ready to ramp into a season 2 here in the next couple of months. We'll have some more information about that. As Tom kind of laid out with his Rule of Golden 3, every time you open up, every time you crack a book and you get into one of these foundational factions of Warhammer 40k, you're really just untapping a huge amount of spiderweb threads that connect to a bunch of other stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So to start us off, I have an interesting or kind of a cool quote from the 8th edition Codex.
Quote by Lord Commissar Baron Reed.
Such a great name.
It's perfect. That's one of the things I love about Imperial Guard is you get all these like super cool title names.
Same with the Mechanicus likes doing that too.
Yeah.
The
High Lord
Imperium in
Fabricator
general.
Yeah.
I care not for which worlds my soldiers are drawn, only that they serve with unflinching loyalty. It is their duty to fight and die so that humanity may be preserved, and it is mine to see the enemy drown in the blood of their sacrifice. Lord Commissar Baron Reed.
He ate it.
So to get to what Marky was talking about, the Astra Militarum, known in Low Gothic as the Imperial Guard, is the largest coherent fighting force in the galaxy. They are the primary fighting. They are the primary fighting force of the Imperium and are at the front line against the many threats that endanger the human race in Warhammer 40k. The Imperial Guard is made up of billions of men and women of the human race, supported by a seemingly unending array of light or heavy armored vehicles. They are the first to respond to a threat if a world's planetary defense force fails. The Imperial Guard is often also deployed in strategic or culturally significant positions in order to act as a garrison or defensive force. No matter how they are being used, they are the frontline fighters of a never-ending war for survival of the very soul of mankind. The Astra Militarum is referred to as the Hammer of the Emperor for the sheer amount of force they can bring to bear against any challenge. They lack the strategic, surgical precision of the Astartes, often referred to as the scalpel of the Emperor. The primary tactic of Imperial Guard generals is to drown the enemy in bodies, men, and munitions. Even for all of the advantages of technology the Guard can muster, the true backbone of the organization is this sheer amount of infantry that they can throw at any given problem. While there is no universal uniform or regimental command structure, other than the inclusion of at least one commissar per regiment, there are scattered patterns of both war gear and organization, as well as wartime discipline and principles of war and stuff like that. Commissars, while part of the Guard, are actually designated political officers of the Officio Perfectus. They serve in both the Imperial Guard and the Imperial Navy and are in place to react swiftly and with deadly violence if they sense the taint of rebellion, chaos, or cowardice. But they are also there to reward and inspire heroics.
So would these almost kind of be like the chaplains of Space Marines?
Essentially. Yeah. They serve as
like a morale person.
officer,
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
In
general,
do we have those nowadays? Do we have officers?
Chaplains.
I know the Marine
actual
Corps has chaplains.
Yeah.
We have chaplains.
But it's more of a religious chaplain.
Yeah, it's more of what do you call
like
it?
a counselor.
Yeah,
right?
counselor
Yeah.
than an actual.
I was going to say, I've got friends who are chaplains in the Navy, and they very often act as like counselors. And that is a morale boost in a way. It's not the same.
'Cause people need to offload some things sometimes.
Yeah, they usually have like a open door policy. And usually like your command has that too, but like it's fake. You actually, it's open door policy. You go let them know like, hey, I've been thinking about hurting myself, and they're like, cool, you're on suicide watch for the next month. No shoelaces, and you can't you can't leave your barracks room.
Right.
You're like, I thought you guys are going to be cool because I told you.
Exactly.
Yeah, like, this
I
is
thought you were going to help
You
me.
guys should have went to your chaplain. No.
Yeah.
Commissar will be like, "Oh, suicide watch? Here, let me help you with that."
Yeah, let me put you right.
You just got to pray it away.
You
pray
got
it away.
You got a problem
Great,
over
you're
here?
on the
Wow,
front
you ain't got a
lines
problem over
tomorrow,
here no more.
Cram.
So in general, lots of the war gear tactics and regimental hierarchy of most of the Imperial Guard is very similar to the Cadian shock troops, as Cadians are held as kind of the gold standard. We'll touch a little bit more on the commissariat, thank you, and the Tempestus later, as well as I believe some of the Sisters of Battle initial training is also done in the CO Perfectus.
Yes.
I think another important thing that we should distinguish right now, if we can take a couple of minutes, is the difference between a planetary defense force and an Imperial Guard regiment.
Yeah, I know we've talked about it before.
Yeah, we did touch on it at some point, but the PDF is every world's kind of in charge of its own like basic defense. It's like they have their own National Guard or something of that kind of nature. But then the Imperial Guard is either drafted as a whole regiment as like a tithe in a founding kind of way. Like
don't they kind of use them as like almost like scouts for Space Marines? They're almost like the initiates.
They
like,
do
so,
that
Yeah,
as well.
they'll pull regiments.
They'll pull regiments
Imperial
from
Guard
the
regiments
best
from the PDF.
Depending on like what level of initial training they kind of want.
Right.
If they're like, okay, we need him to go to a war zone, but we need him to start out at least knowing how to load a rifle.
Now would those
it.
be if they pull a PDF force, would that be like conscripts?
At that point, they're probably conscript-ish level, and then they're basically trained in transit to be regular.
So I'm assuming like not very many PDF are like veterans that they're pulling, right?
No,
veterans are
PDF, basically, if they survive their planet getting wrecked, they probably get drafted into whatever Imperial Guard regiment saved them.
Damn, that sucks.
And then taken away.
Yeah.
They're like, hey, you were useful. Come with us.
Yeah, and then the planet will kind of be left to govern and police itself. So planetary defense force will be raised by the planetary governors for two reasons. One is for that defense, but the other one is because that tithe is going to come at some point, and they're going to need a place to pull those soldiers from.
Yeah, it almost stems back to the kind of like feudal structure of soldiery, where the noble lords were supposed to maintain a certain number of men at arms.
Yeah.
Like that was their responsibility to their king, is to have, okay, you own so much land. So you were then responsible. You should have enough peasants to bring 500 pikemen when we go to war.
Right. Right.
And then when, they didn't necessarily need them all the time. When it was time to go to war, the king was like, hey, it's wartime. You better show up with 500 men.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Except
so a planet,
on Warhammer scale.
A member of the planetary defense force is probably like an accountant or a programmer or, a car salesman by day.
Like what is your profession kind of thing?
Yeah.
They're reservist.
They're reserved.
No offense to reservists, but
And
they are citizen soldiers, not soldiers. Wait, they are citizens who are sometimes soldiers rather than being soldiers who are citizens.
That was a good song, and then it played way too much.
Yeah,
Citizen
as most songs end up doing.
You never heard
That's what
that
happens. The
song?
song's good, it gets overplayed.
Yeah,
yep.
I think like the third time I heard it, I was like, all right, I'm good.
I'm over it.
Yeah,
but yeah. Also, some PDFs would be like full time. Obviously, like whoever mans the orbital guns. Like that dude's there all the time.
Like Katie.
That dude
that's just a different way of life.
Yeah.
That dude might be part of the Imperial Guard on a planet. So a planet will have a planetary defense force and an Imperial Guard.
It could,
so that the Imperial Guard regiment may not be tithed yet. It might just be trained and ready to go. But that Imperial Guard regiment is going to have more powers. And then a planetary defense force in an active war zone is obviously going to operate on a different level than a planetary defense force in a peaceful area. Yeah. But in general, the planetary defense force, it supports and defends, and the Imperial Guard is the offensive force, at least now.
Yeah, and oftentimes the planetary defense force is expected just to hold. They're not expected to hold well. They're just expected to sound the alarm and hold long enough.
Yeah, they're not like going out and
it's like
around.
the scene in Mulan, when the Huns come over the wall and they tried so hard to get the fire lit. That's the PDF.
You guys and all of your references to Disney stuff. I'm like, what are you talking about?
I just figure everybody's seen that movie.
Yeah. Well, the point is that
I just remember the dishonor on you, dishonor on your cow.
Well, yeah.
It's just that the only references I get are those of movies because my lack of
Right, he doesn't
knowledge
read
is
books, so I have
yeah.
to reference things that he'll get.
Exactly.
So like that, they just have to
Like
survive
Disney
long enough
movies.
to get the astropathic message out so that
Yeah.
the rest of the Imperium knows, hey, there's bad guys here. Because the Imperium is so
we gotta
big
respond.
that they can't keep a full garrison on every world all the time. That's just not going to happen. They can't even put a border. They don't have enough men, and because it's just so big, they don't have enough manpower and naval power to just maintain a constant border.
I think it's Marcus on Lorehammer, but it might be the other host, Eric. But one of them has a joke where they say the actual way to defeat chaos is to put a blank every 150 meters spread out across the entire galaxy.
Yeah, why didn't they just fill Cadia with blanks?
Is it blanks are not nearly as populous as
Yeah, they got all those
people think they
those
are?
sisters.
Yeah, and
Sisters
there's
of
like
Silence.
500 of them.
Yeah, just stick them.
And that's all they have.
Just stick them
Yeah.
closest to the eye.
I think the
I could
way-
have saved Cadia.
I think the way that it kind of works is there's supposed to be 1 or 2% of the population is psychers, and then 1 or 2% of those are blanks.
Blanks, yeah.
It's probably even less.
Can you imagine being a blank? Like everyone just fucking hates you.
Dude, it would suck.
I like the way that they're rephrased. So that was the old way. Like if you were a blank or you had the pariah gene, people just were super uncomfortable around you and they hated you for no reason. I like the way that they're reframing them now with the Siege of Terra books. Yeah, like you can't really see that they're there. It's not that they make you uncomfortable.
They're
or that
like
you
the
don't
gray
like
man.
them. Yeah,
You just don't
They're-
notice them.
they're just your
they
attention
just-
slips
Fuck
off
is
them.
that? Fuck's
It's
Gray
like
Man.
what was it in Doctor Who?
The silence or whatever.
Yeah,
Things
the
that-
silence
yeah.
things where as soon as you look away from them, they erase your memory.
Yeah, you forget
Oh,
they
what?
exist.
Yeah, you forget they exist as
So
soon
they're
as you look
straight-
away from them.
Do Sisters of Silence, Men in Black.
Yeah,
I'm doing
yeah,
it.
yeah.
I'm doing.
Yeah.
That's
I
that's
thought there
I
was-
do like that. That's kind of cool.
I thought I heard
So the-
something about blanks that they slowly devour your soul or something like that. Like they're a black hole, essentially.
Yeah, so
There's
they
some
have
that are
no
probably
soul.
super blanks that do that a little bit.
Yeah.
The assassins.
Right.
Yeah, they have
that's
no.
the Calexis. That's the blank. Yeah.
They have
But
no
he's
souls.
amplified, right?
Yeah, that's why they have no psychic representation, because their psychic power is they were born without a soul.
They're opposite.
Yeah. When we get into the black ships and
Inquisition stuff.
the Inquisition
Psychers, yeah.
stuff, we'll probably talk a lot about psychers. We'll probably just talk about psychers in general.
That'll be a
from the
whole episode,
Imperium.
probably.
Yeah. Let's go back to one of those ideas that we introduced, the Hammer of the Emperor. So the origin of the Astra Militarum stretches back to the days of the Great Crusade. The Space Marine legions of the Adeptus Astartes led the expansion and reclamation of humanity from the front lines. Each warrior was roughly equivalent to 12 normal men and peerless in battle, but not limitless in their ability. The ever-expanding front lines made it so that the legions grew more separated by thousands and thousands of light years. The Emperor required more manpower to ensure the monumental task of the Great Crusade did not falter, and so the Imperial Army was created. The Imperial Army was a vital part of the expeditionary fleets, originally numbering millions of troops but swelling into the billions as the Crusade continued.
So
Ranks
this is
of
when,
tanks and armored divisions, as well as massive armadas of spacecraft that were all subordinate to the Astartes legions.
Let me interrupt you, Ryan.
Yeah.
First of all, I feel like you bumped those numbers down a little bit. 12 normal men, one Space Marine. I don't know about that.
This is also in
That's
30K when all the Solar Auxilia guys were better
which
equipped.
leads me to my next. No, and second of all, this is when legions were around, right? Not chapters.
Right.
Okay.
Yes, Space Marines legions.
Which were,
I don't know
which
if
were
I said
thousands.
legions,
No, you
but
did.
yeah.
You did. I was just curious around that time.
So the official lore from the 8th edition Codex reads, each warrior was equal to 12 normal men. I think they say now
Don't feed me that
in
shit.
42 and M42, and I don't know about Primaris. This is Firstborn Marines. They say 10. It's 1 to 10. So
Yeah, I don't know about
normal new Space Marines that are only 400 or 500 years old are weaker than the Legion era Space Marines.
that. Oh,
Horus Heresy
really?
Marines were stronger.
Yes.
Gene Seed is degraded over time, and they've lost
Yep.
some of their bonuses.
Really?
Yeah, they're
Yep.
not as powerful as they used to be.
They lost some of their bones.
They lost some of their mojo.
Their bonuses. So
that's one of the reasons that
originally-
Primaris like was so like extra big,
'Cause
but
it's
it's
pure
not
DMC.
related to this topic.
It's got
So
that pure shit.
for another later,
for the Primaris episode.
yeah, for the Primaris Lieutenant episode.
That gets like at least 4.
Well, yeah, that'll be
400.
like 10 episodes.
That's like 10 miniseries. I don't
You
even
know what?
you're
That'll
talking
that'll
about.
be like in every other episode will be a Primaris Lieutenant.
Yeah.
when we get to actually conquering Space Marines from a podcast level.
Oh,
There's going to be like an overview of the concept of Space Marine. That's going to be a series on its own, and then all of the big ones are going to get their own miniseries.
We're gonna have a
gonna
sub-series
be-
called Adeptus
awful.
Lieutenticus. Some shit.
Adeptus Officio Lieutenticus.
Yeah. I mean, that's almost what we're doing with Guard, but I was able to distill out a good amount of extra information, so we should be able to pack those in. So
Yeah,
less,
it's just-
less than the Space Marines ones.
With these factions where there's a couple of choices to make in the way that you play the game and the way that you approach the lore, it's really easy to do like a mini series covering the entire faction. In certain factions, Space Marines being one of them, Space Marine is like an umbrella term, and then there are factions inside of that umbrella term. So the White Scars and the Ultramarines have very, very different lore-based and faction-based pasts, and they'll end up being their own episode. It basically, we're not going to be able, like we did with Craft Worlds, where we ran down like 12 Craft Worlds and
Yeah,
we're going
the
to do
Craft
Imperial
Worlds.
Guard. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's going to be a little bit more difficult because we'll be like, and then there's the Ultramarines. Now we need to talk to you for 2 hours about Ultramar and all sorts of shit.
Let's have a conversation about plot armor.
It's not as straightforward
Yeah.
as like orcs and whatnot. Orcs is like,
Right.
yeah, the red ones. They just like to go fast and shoot.
Right,
The yellow
yeah.
ones, they
Space
like
Marines,
to shoot.
Space Marines are like, yeah, the red ones. You're like, which one of 500?
Yeah,
Yeah.
There's a lot of red ones.
There's
And the
the
same thing will
vampires.
And the same thing will happen when we get to Chaos. We're not going to be able to talk about demons as one mini series, and we're not going to be able to talk about the Traitor Legions as one series. It'll
Definitely.
be split up. But anyway,
Especially because
that's
each
it.
one fell differently. And yeah.
Yeah. And they all have their own little cool, unique things. And
Mhm.
I'm sure we're going to come back to Imperial Guard for a couple of reasons. One, we're going to talk about Gene Stealer cults, which
Yep.
have some interaction with
A lot of
Imperial Guard.
there's
And then we're
that's
gonna talk
basically
about-
guaranteed interaction.
We're going to talk about the Officio Perfectus.
Perfectus.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Which is very connected to the Guard. We're going to talk
Perfectus.
about the Imperial Navy at some point, which has
Mhm.
connections to the Guard. So the Guard will keep coming back to, especially with the older, larger factions. There are going to be all of these little breakdowns.
Definitely.
So originally, the Imperial Army was appointed to clean up remaining resistance, garrison, and hold the territory of the planets that had been taken by the Astartes legions. They would come in, they would take the planet, they would set up an Imperial Army garrison, and they basically be like, all right, we just defeated
Your
you. You're
problem
now
now."
part of our army. This is now your problem. And then they would leave. They'd yeet out.
It's very much the armored spearhead with the infantry shaft approach.
I'm sorry.
Yeah. Except
Or-
they're making the infantry as they go.
Well,
It'd be
yeah,
like-
that too.
Yeah. It'd be like rolling a bunch of tanks into Canada, America's
It's-
hat,
yeah.
and taking over Canada with like 10 tanks and then being like, great, everybody in Canada, you're now
You're now part
infantry."
of the army.
You'd be like, wait, what? So they would,
But,
these forces that were left in their wake were there to enforce compliance on compliant planets and to maintain the supply lines, the ever-growing supply lines of the Great Crusade. However, by the time the Crusade reached the Eastern Fringe, the Imperial Army saw service as frontline troops. So as time went on, these guys started fighting on the front lines.
Well, yeah, as the front lines grew larger, eventually they were going to come under direct contact.
The way that the system is built, it exponentially grows. So if you look at it as rings, like the first ring of planets around Terra, as soon as they moved out to the second ring, that first ring is insulated already. It's in the Empire, and
Right.
those people are probably,
And then move out.
more compliant. So those guys, those soldiers can now move out to the second ring. And then by the time they get to the third ring, the second and first ring guys can move out. So
And that's
it just
why,
kind of grew that way.
as much as grimdark as the universe is, there's definitely planets in the Imperium that don't suck.
Yeah. There are
The
very
closer
nice
to Holy
places.
Terra you get, the better off you are.
Also,
Yeah,
they
the
have, like Paradise
Holy
Worlds and
Terra's
stuff,
fucked
right?
The
up
Galactic.
because we fucked it up before the Warhammer kind of story started.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was before 30K, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
Humanity
unification
had
wars.
already nuked the world
Yeah.
before the Emperor.
Terra is
got
still
involved.
shit, isn't it?
Oh yeah, they can't fix Terra.
Terra
Terra's
hasn't
fucked
got-
permanently.
Yeah, so the Emperor was actually attempting to fix Terra when Horus laid siege to the planet. So that's more 30K stuff, but yeah, we'll definitely touch on a little bit of the Unification Wars probably next episode. So this all changed. The Imperial armies.
When the Fire Nation attacked.
Yep. So the Imperial army's fate changed in the aftermath of the Horus Heresy. To prevent a large-scale rebellion from forming again, the truly titanic armies of the Crusade were heavily compartmentalized. The Space Marine legions were split into many chapters, and the Imperial Army was entirely disbanded. Never again would a ground commander be given direct control over fleet-based assets. From the ashes of this was born the Imperial Navy and the Imperial Guard.
So this is kind of why I like Warhounds so much, is that how devastating Warhounds were during this time. They only let Warhounds go in pairs now, because 11 Warhounds like are completely devastating to like other Titanic units.
Like a whole like platoon.
A pack of
Warhounds
Yeah.
is just considered too OP.
Yeah, it's
and
ridiculous.
They don't need to field that.
Because
Exactly.
you don't want the person, the preceptor that's in charge of that group, to all of a sudden turn heretic and turn 11 Warhounds on your Imperial Guard army.
Yep.
11
That would be
Warhounds
bad.
would wipe probably hundreds of thousands of guardsmen
Oh yeah.
before the guard were able to take them down.
Oh yeah. Well,
Guard
it
has
has like their
tools.
own, even with larger Titans, because of the way like Warhounds are designed and whatnot.
Oh yeah, 'cause
Yeah.
They're so fast that they
Right.
can get
They're-
around behind, and
there
the
were-
pack you can coyote
Exactly.
on them.
They
So
were
only let them go in
designed to
pairs
take
now.
out bigger Titans.
Yep.
They're crazy. But yeah, that's actually a good point, Mark, to bring that up, because one of the other things that was part of an Imperial Army's designation at the time was the Titan legions that were part of the Imperium. Not the ones that were on loan from the Mechanicum, but the ones that were actually part of the Imperium would fall under an Imperial Army general as well. The Imperial Guard, or Astra Militarum, was reorganized into planetary-sized units of the Militarum Regimentos, which was further subdivided into regiments. The commissars of the Officio Prefectus were introduced to enforce and inspire loyalty and discipline. The Imperial Guard became dependent on the Imperial Navy to move. This dependence was designed to ensure that should an Imperial Guard regiment turn against the Imperium, the rebellion could be confined to a single planet. While should an Imperial naval fleet rebel, they wouldn't have the ground troops or resupply lines necessary to spread their rebellion either.
Yeah, because the Navy ships only have their like small boarding parties and stuff. They don't have enough like.
So like if the head general guy of like the Navy, the captain,
Even if the entire Navy were to be like, nah, fuck y'all,
yeah,
I'm going rogue at the same time, then they would go into port to refuel somewhere, and the port would just be like, nah.
exactly.
And
So no one section of the
Yeah.
Imperial Guard is gonna
Yeah.
destroy.
it's all done from a mitigation standpoint. We'll bring up some examples when we touch Imperial Guard history of this not working. And another thing is, but in general, the idea is that the admiral of the fleet and the general of the ground forces probably aren't going to see eye to eye. So they're probably not going to ally with each other. And even if they do ally with each other, okay, that one system needs to be dealt with now. It becomes exponentially more difficult for, these two systems agree with each other.
It's
These
too many
three
cooks.
systems agree. Yes. Yeah, exactly. They'll infight. And
And
stuff
then
like
you
that.
have the other problem with like such a weird meritocracy combined with, the feudalism and all this other nonsense that the imperial bureaucracy is built upon, is that, well, if it goes well, who gets the glory?
Right.
Is it the Navy
Imperium
fleet commander who won the orbital battle, or is it the ground troops?
the ground guy. Yeah.
And if it goes spectacularly wrong, who gets the blame?
Yeah, exactly. So the Imperium is big, and the galaxy is large enough that it is pretty much incomprehensible to human minds. Keeping the Imperium connected, both with communications and physically, relies on use of the warp. The warp, while providing the means for interstellar travel and interstellar communication, is also perilous and contain and corrupt anything that moves through it. At every border of the Imperium of Man is currently a battlefield, with nightmares, Xenos, and other terrors constantly pressing in, even as the warp presses out from within the Imperium itself. Only the Astra Militarum can marshal the manpower to fight such an endless war.
It's kind of crazy, the whole idea of like man relies on the warp. So you therefore can never defeat evil because you
We could
rely
never
on
get
evil
rid of
to
the warp.
Yeah,
Right.
But
It's
the
kind of
warp
crazy concept.
didn't used to, as we kind of like went over with the Eldari Lord, the warp didn't used to be as shitty of a place as it is now.
Yeah.
It's gotten worse.
It's getting worse.
He used to be a
Constantly
good
getting
neighborhood.
worse.
Right? Like, and then
This
and
is
then the
like a
Slaneshi
good
demons
neighborhood.
moved in.
I like that.
Damn
I like
new
that, Tom.
neighbors.
That's pretty awesome.
Damn new neighbors.
It's like a bunch. You have a very happy marriage, and strippers move in next door, and you're just like, damn.
I'm kind of seeing it the other way. You really like your neighborhood. You're good. You're all awesome. You've gotten to a point where you enjoy everything, and then like a hipster moves in next door and starts,
And then a
opening
frat boy
art
moves in across the
galleries
street, and then they're fighting constantly.
I was just going like there's an art gallery in town now. It's gone to shit.
God damn it.
It's gentrified.
Gentrification.
The vast size of the battles fought by the Imperial Guard are dehumanizing in an extreme. Often, hundreds of regiments become little more than a statistic on some strategist's screen. Where Xenos species and the ruinous powers have technology and powers that humans may not even understand, the Guard will simply employ overwhelming force to fix any issue. As an example, an Eldari pilot might be the most skilled aerialist and in a much more refined and maneuverable aircraft, able to dodge, weave, outperform maneuvers to take out targets. However, the Imperial Guard will be like, well, fuck it, and cover the entire sky in flak. Because
Can't dodge
you can't
this
dodge
if there's nowhere to dodge.
if it's a solid goddamn wall.
It's the same approach to musket fire. Okay, one
Mhm.
musket might not do the trick, but if you stack 100 guys pointing muskets in a direction, fuck everything in that direction. It's a wall of lead at that point.
Yeah,
You
exactly.
guys remember that Jackass bit where they did Riot Claymore?
Yeah,
it's like that, but with an
Jesus
Eldari
Christ, Mark.
plane.
exactly. Blam.
Yeah. And if you haven't seen it, go watch it.
Go watch it. So where a squad of Chaos Marines might be embedded in and holding a massively important objective, protected by the dark ruinous powers, the Guard may just hammer the entire area endlessly until there isn't anything left to hold.
The old little rhyme-ish saying, a bullet might have someone's name on it, and a grenade is to whoever it may concern.
Mm.
But
Yeah.
artillery is dear grid coordinates.
Yes.
Dear grid coordinates.
You see that? You see that bit of a quarter mile of terrain over there? Yes, sir. I don't want to anymore.
Yes, my lord.
Yeah.
Fuck that grid in particular.
Fuck everything in that general direction.
Dude, that's like the We Were Soldiers when they got hit with the fucking napalm. Oh
Dude,
my
it was
God.
rough.
Oh my
Watching that
God.
scene, I was like, "Oh,
Yeah. I was like, oh, that guy's cool. Oh, no.
deep fried chicken legs.
Oh, it was like Play-Doh.
yeah." The
So
Imperial
it's that-
Guard is more willing to just throw, because that's what they have the most of. It's
Yeah.
just men, munitions, and
Bodies
and
and
everything.
bombs.
Yeah, we've talked about it before. They use it
it's
more as like
supply.
yeah, exactly.
They have
Yeah.
a supply surplus in a way that the enemies do not have.
Yeah.
How old is that Eldar?
Yeah,
Right?
right? Exactly.
How old is that Eldar? Well, this 18-year-old kid just stabbed it to death with a knife.
Right.
Because 1,000 knives wins.
It's
Yep.
true every time.
Yeah.
So without a constant supply of fresh recruits and flesh and flesh, that's not what I mean, but it sounds real good. Without a constant deluge of fresh recruits and fresh supplies, the Imperial Guard would dry up and cease to function. So much of the strategy behind their tactics relies on this concept of overwhelming force. Even in this hell, however, where millions take to the field of battle, there is still the heroics of singular companies, veteran squads, and inspiring battlefield leaders.
Sly Marbu.
Yeah, those
We'll get to him.
those in fighting impossible odds, often from widely different backgrounds or even different worlds and cultures, working to take on terrible Xenos charges or to take back enemy positions, secure pivotal objectives, or even to just die to the last person, making sure they save a handful of others. What makes the Guard so admirable is even in the face of near constant fear and terror, they will lift their weapons, plant their feet, and continue the fight. Their
So,
lives might.
I got an issue with this. Hold on, Ryan. I'm gonna interrupt you again. I'm gonna let you finish. But
You like
Mariah Carey
in
had
a
the
quote.
best CD. No,
In a
no.
Go for it.
It wasn't Mariah Carey. It was what's her name? Beyonce.
It was Taylor Swift. No, yeah, whatever.
Yeah, Beyonce had the best album. So I know Kevin caught this too, but there was like a piece of art that shows Imperial Guard fighting Necrons, and it shows one dude just getting dursted, right? And there's another guy hiding behind cover with his las pistol to his chin. Yeah, and I was like, "What the fuck is that? Where's the commissar?" No.
That's after the commissar dies. The commissar was like, "Glory then to the emperor," and then he got
immediately
dursted.
died. Yeah.
That's the other guy, the guy that was getting dursted.
Yeah,
That was the commissar.
But like, it's like you're gonna die. Why not go down fight? Like, it was Acadia. It was Acadian, so it's
no,
like,
it wasn't necessarily
oh,
Acadian.
it wasn't Acadian.
It's just
So Cadia,
everybody uses Cadian armor.
Oh, Acadian.
So we'll talk.
It's
We'll talk
standard
about it relatively early in the history episode, which is probably going to be episode 2, I believe. But Cadia is so good of a standard that in like M31 they started training other regiments in their standards and to use their gear.
It's like how we train NATO.
Right.
NATO cross trains with us because they like the way we train.
Yeah,
Gotcha.
how at a certain point all military uniforms kind of seem to look the same.
Yeah. Somebody figured out the right way to do it, and they're like, "Yeah, let's just do it that way."
Yeah, it's called multicam.
That shit works, dude.
Dude, multicam is good.
Yeah, it's called multicam.
That's why a lot of stuff ends up looking Cadian. It's also the mainstay of the plastic men, so it's the easiest to kind of like kit bash and combine as your base.
Short of specialist units, like certain worlds obviously require
Catachans.
certain things. Well, like Catachan is a jungle world, so they have a different uniform because the normal uniform is bad where they are.
Kachan.
I don't. Catation.
Catation.
It's not supposed. It's not Catachan. It's Catation, which drives me nuts.
Crustacean,
It's
God.
not
Crustacean.
Jungle crab.
It's not Abaddon. It's Abaddon.
Abaddon.
Abaddon. Yeah.
So
which
bad.
fucking drives me nuts.
Yeah,
It's not Tyranids. It's It's what's the planet called? The first one that they hit.
Tyrannus.
Tyran. Yeah, Tyrannus. So it's not Tyranids. It's
Tyranids.
Yeah.
Oh,
Tyranids.
like tyrannic war veterans.
Yeah.
Yes.
Tyranids.
Yeah.
That is the dumbest shit I've ever heard.
Because
British people fuck it up.
Yeah,
no, they wrote these words down.
Tom's like, yeah, I used to get made fun of for talking like a British person. I totally bet.
They wrote these words down because they looked cool spelled out. And then they circulated it for fucking 10 years.
And then they
were like,
oh,
we need to secure our IP. We need to change the way everyone's been pronouncing our
All
stuff.
these dumbass Americans are saying it wrong.
That's really what it boils down to.
James Woodshop. Goddamn James Woodshop.
They're all fucking Americans. Take the bit of hay out of your mouth.
Yeah. Just because there's an I there doesn't mean you need to pronounce it.
Right?
It's not French, Mark. It's in French. There's a bunch of consonants. Aren't I supposed to pronounce all of this? No, only the ones that we want you to pronounce. Which ones do you want us to pronounce? I don't know. Figure it out.
I heard a really fun little history fact. I don't know really how true it is, but it was the reason French has all those extra silent letters is the Scribes Guild was paid by the letter.
That would not surprise me.
They were like, oh, well, all these words have extra letters, so I get paid 12 coins more.
So you know the whole reason that we have indents at the beginning of paragraphs, right?
To sell more paper?
No. So back in the day, there was something called an indenture, which was the only way that you would know who scribed the book. They basically had to sign it.
Oh,
so what they
and
did,
that's where it went?
Yeah. So what they did was that's where you would get like the F. So if the first letter of the sentence was an F, there would be that really big piece of artwork that was there.
Yeah,
that was
and that's
an
their
indenture.
signature? Okay.
Yeah. So now we continue that because that's how when people used to handwrite books, they would track
It's just
their
that
work.
became the format.
That's gnarly. It's
And
like
that's
crazy.
Shrek.
So that's how Cadians got to be the standard for everything.
See, I got a movie reference.
It's
from
like
Shrek.
Shrek.
Yeah.
Shrek starts with that. That's
Yeah.
the big
It's
thing.
got
And it
the
zooms
indent.
in.
Yeah, but Shrek
Wow.
is the worst
That's reaching.
movie ever.
How dare you? Tom?
So
It's the
okay,
worst movie
Shrek
ever.
was a good
Some-
movie when it came out. Shrek is not
No,
good.
it's not.
300 watches later.
He boned
all the
that
movie
dragon.
Shrek-
That's all I'm saying. He boned that.
all the movie
He
Shrek
boned that
does
dragon.
is perpetuate. They're like, fat ugly guy, beautiful princess.
I mean, she's
she's
alright.
ugly. Remember?
No,
That's the joke.
no.
Is she's actually ugly.
No, but
She's at least a sump too.
They're like-
conquers all.
they're like, oh, here's this ogre, Cameron Diaz. Now you're fat and ugly now too.
That was Cameron Diaz.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
That's
she was the
Cameron
voice.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my god, I never knew that.
Yeah, exactly. It's because they made her fat and ugly. So
Dude,
you-
in the oh god, the first time I saw Cameron Diaz in The Mask when I was like 10 years old, I felt something. I felt something
I felt something.
real deep in my soul when she walked
Anyways.
into that bank.
Yeah.
Cameron Diaz.
Anyways.
So to sum up what Mark was getting at, what makes the Guard so admirable is that even in the face of near constant fear and terror, they will lift their weapons, plant their feet, and continue the fight.
Most
Their
of them.
lives might
That
be
one guy
short.
shot himself. That
Bi-
happened.
Bitch made ass dude trying to kill himself.
Their lives might be short and brutal. Their sacrifices might be insultingly thankless, but without them, the Imperium would crumble.
Damn. Yeah, that was a little rough, but all right.
Well, I
Mhm.
mean, there's so many of them, and they have such little impact as a singular person.
You like once the scale increases so like far, it's like counting ants.
Together strong. Yes.
Apes together strong.
Apes together strong.
It's together.
Yeah, that's
So-
exactly that's the strategy. Apes
Was that-
together strong.
Was that Tarzan or
No,
Planet
it's
of the Apes?
Planet of the Apes.
Planet of the Apes? Okay, yeah.
Whenever
I was like,
get
it's
ar-
one or the other.
Whenever I get
Together
around to
strong.
whenever I get around to actually doing Imperial Guard army stuff, I'm totally painting apes
That was
together
good.
strong on a tank.
That's
It's happening.
You know what it is? So that tank fought Eldar and their captured
Oh,
Eldar prisoner
Monkai
called
together
them
strong.
Monkai.
Dude,
Monkai
hell
together strong.
No, I'm putting it on one of my
No,
tanks.
hey, any of you
It's mine.
motherfuckers listening to this, you can't take that. That's
Yeah,
ours.
it's going on my
That's
tank.
patent. Hey, that's James Workshop patent. You can't take it.
James Workbench.
James
Workbench.
casting couch.
All right, so we're gonna get into strategic command to wrap up the episode. So Kevin, should lead us off here.
Alrighty, so Imperial Guard kind of follows like we're humans, so we kind of follow a general kind of
Structure.
standard human pattern of structure, like a pyramid almost.
Two
So-
arms, two legs,
What?
head. you
Yeah,
know.
it's very top down.
Get someone beneath you and make them do more work.
Exactly.
They got like schemes
American
named
way.
after
Trickle.
it, right?
Yeah.
Trickle
You
down
remember how that
ammo
one dude got to
distribution.
walk into the barracks and tell you what to do? Well, some dude walked into his barracks and told him what
That
to
was
do.
the whole shit rolls downhill thing.
Yeah, yeah.
Kind of like
See?
essential oils.
Yeah,
It's just
rolls downhill. Yeah,
I don't.
It's really-
I don't gripe to you. I gripe to my commanding officer.
yeah.
I don't gripe in front of you.
But anyways, yeah, it's a very typical of Napoleonic age through like kind of the world wars. That's kind of the time period that it's most semblance of, with some earlier, but Napoleonic age has a lot of holdovers from previous ages as well. It also has the commissioned officer postings, which is definitely a very prevalent thing within the Imperial Guard.
Do they have like an actual ranking system? I mean, I know they have one, but do they have like an actual listed one? Like this is E1, E2, E3. This is
it
01,
changes. It
Yeah.
changes
changes.
based on regiment.
Yeah,
Oh,
it
really?
changes. Some
Yeah.
of them have.
There's
they
not a
skip
universal-
some. I mean, there's recruits and things like that,
Right.
but Cadians call theirs white shields.
right.
you know.
Okay, so it's not like a private fucking corporal.
No, so
You have sergeants and
There are
commanders.
privates, there are sergeants, lieutenants, things like that. But they're
in
not-
general, yeah. In general,
think there's even as
sergeant,
many.
lieutenant, in general. So yeah, sergeant, lieutenant, in general seem to be the only like universal ranks.
Right, yeah.
And even general is less general. It's more often referred to as like Lord Commander or Sector Command.
And it's pronounced.
Usually,
master.
usually there's a general under the Lord Commander, but yeah,
It's-
Lord Commander or Sector Command or
It's pronounced
System
lieutenant.
Governor.
Lieutenant.
Lieutenant.
I don't see an F in there anywhere.
Lieutenant.
Can you point me out the F in that word, Tom?
Well,
Yes,
you're
colonel.
the one that
Yes,
spelled
colonel.
it wrong.
It's pronounced herbs because there's a fucking H in it. Are we going to go there?
It's
soon?
the Americans that spell it.
No,
wrong.
it's a H.
Hey, it's
It's a
Herbie
H.
Hancock.
It's not John Hancock. Herbie Hancock.
Oh, yeah, so give us a breakdown. There's a Lord Commander of the segmentum at the
Yeah,
top.
so we've got Lord Commander of a segmentum, then you have sector officers, militarum regimentos, and then this is where it starts to deviate because as you get closer to the ground level, that's where more specialist things start to happen. You don't really see that at a big level of command. So from there, you have going down into like individual like company command and regiment commands, and then in there we have some that lead from the front. That's where you get the like drive me closer so I can hit them with my sword commander. That kind of guy. Or there's some commanders that
so there's like lateral ranks, like tank commanders versus regular commanders versus like platoon commanders kind of thing.
Yeah. A company commander of tanks and a company commander of infantry are essentially equal rank. They're both company commanders.
Okay, so it's like a sergeant major and a master guns for like.
It would be like, what is it like to be a tank commander for an Abrams is what, like captain probably?
Shit, I don't know, man. I wasn't a tanker.
I'm just so like whatever that would be, the equal length for just the foot infantry is essentially the same rank.
Oh, okay.
They don't have equal responsibilities, but they are. I mean, going back even farther into a naval captain and a land captain are the same rank. A naval captain technically has authority over more things during their duties because they're in charge of a ship.
Yeah. So,
but a land captain is technically the same.
You know what? It kind of makes sense that different regiments would have different ranks and whatnot. Now that I think about it, because our different branches of the military have different ranks.
Right.
So it only makes sense.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of standardization towards the mid top or towards the top of the different specializations, because the Imperial Guard needs to be in a position where if your entire left flank gets eliminated, except for like
someone
25 veteran soldiers, some sergeant can take over and then those guys just follow him.
Right. That guy then becomes sector command.
Field promotion.
Yeah. Field promotions are definitely a thing in the Imperial Guard.
Oh, yeah.
That is.
I'm sure they live by that.
Yeah. So as we're saying, because field promotions are a thing, some commanders are like, no, I've been to the Scholar Progenium. I know how war works. I'm going to sit in the back and tell y'all how
to do it.
Yeah. And they'll sit in the back from a bunker or in orbit or in a hive spire and do that. Oh. And those are the guys who end up living a long time.
Praise me, Ryan. I knew the name of an author.
I know.
Oftentimes, regretted or begrudged by the frontline troops for being, sector command sitting in their happy bunker.
Yeah.
With his AC,
right? With his air conditioning and shit.
It is recaf.
I've got the general like layout from top to bottom. Basically, lowest rank to the highest rank, as far as like ranks are concerned for them in the organization side of things. You have guardsman, corporal, sergeant, lieutenant, captain, major, colonel, general. But the best part is the general is actually the lowest of the generals.
Yes.
Yeah.
So you have general, then you have Lord General, then you have Lord General Militant.
Yep.
Then you have Lord Commander. And then you have Lord Commander Militant.
That is almost like Marine structure, because Marine, you have 4 generals. I think it's my little general, Brigadier General, Major General, Lieutenant General, and then General.
Yeah.
Be my little general.
In our armed services, when you get into General, Admiral, I can't remember
stars with
other
like
ones. They each have star rankings.
Yeah, 05 for Navy's captain, which is our 02 for Marines.
Yeah, well, you have basically like lieutenant to colonel is what they consider regimental officers.
Yeah.
So that's
those are the guys that'll be typically on the ground.
Yeah, like so field.
That's also, as Kevin had mentioned, here you go, here's the structure. The Catachans don't really follow that. They have different names for everything.
No, yeah, I mean,
they're similar.
Generic,
they still have sergeant, corporal, and all that.
One of the references is like a sergeant for like Talaran is called like a doofdar.
Yeah. They'll have cultural names to replace some of these and things like that. But in general, there's sergeants and things. There used to be, like back in the day, a model for a lieutenant.
Yeah.
But that was replaced with, I believe, company commander or platoon commander.
Yeah, see, that's where I would probably have the most fun if I was building guard, is like giving them little ranks and stuff.
Oh yeah, I mean, you saw
giving them a little kill
butter
count
bars and stuff. Yeah, all that stuff's really fun. So, in the rare circumstances when one of these individuals, typically fairly high in the command, is deemed worthy, the High Lords of Terra may grant the title of War Master.
Is Horus still War Master?
Exact. That very same title is actually continued to be used. Not very often, but they do still use it, and it still does have basically the same level of authority.
You think he's salty about it? Gilliman is like, why this guy's War Master?
Well, so usually they'll name somebody War Master when they're going to send this dude and a bunch of people specifically off to do a crusade.
Yeah, they'll name a crusade It's basically like naming a crusade leader.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
You'd be the war master of the
Indomitus Crusade or some shit.
So in Gaunt's Ghosts, I remember all the names of them. They're on the Sabbat Worlds Crusade, which is a string of like holy worlds in a certain sector. That Sabbat Worlds Crusade is led by War Master Makaroth.
Oh,
Right.
Who was a general.
So it's not a rank,
And
it's
then
more of like
it's a title
Yeah.
bestowed upon the current general
Okay.
acting in supreme command.
Yeah, so it's not. So there's probably multiple war masters for different crusades and shit going on, right?
Yeah,
Usually
typically
there's-
there's only kind of like one major crusade happening at a time.
Yeah.
So the
But-
Imperium now doesn't have one great crusade. They have a lot of little crusades, and typically there's only a couple of them happening per segmentum at a
all-
time.
Very far apart.
Yeah. Horus was the war master of the Great Crusade. So Horus was the war master of every single human troop that existed.
Gotcha.
This guy, War Master Makaroth,
Makaroth.
That is
is
slouch.
only in charge of the human forces in the Sabbat
Sabbat
Crusade. Yeah.
Yeah.
So if the Indominus War Master had a problem with him, he could just shift his entire battle group and go, and they would go head to head or whatever. So it's still compartmentalized. It's just
Right.
compartmentalized.
Yeah.
Bigger.
So War Master Makaroth only had that title as that crusade.
And they don't
like
hold
as soon
him-
as
yeah.
he left that crusade, that title goes.
Yeah.
Right. Okay.
And it's typically passed on either by commanders. It can be passed on by the commander's wish. Like if one gets wounded in battle, he can designate who takes the mantle, or the High Lords of Terra can be like, okay, we're starting a crusade. You are the best.
Yeah, and that's
Gotcha.
usually what happens is the High Lords want something done, so they name somebody. Any rule in Warhammer lore or Warhammer bureaucracy can completely be overridden by the High Lords of Terra. For instance, there's rumors that the Minotaurs are traitor gene seed and that the Minotaurs are the High Lords of Terra's like bitch boys. The High
Yeah,
Lords
they're
made the
just dicks.
Minotaurs specifically to fuck with other Space Marine chapters because they needed that. And
They
the
needed
only
that,
reason that exists is because the High Lords needed to fuck around.
because
So-
they don't actually control the custodes, so they
Right.
need their own kind of like lex.
So who designates the High Lords of Terror?
The High Lords are
There's a bunch of ancient rights of
Like
noble
Yes.
it's a lot of
houses.
politics. And
There's
shit.
it's a whole lot of Game of Thrones going on.
Yep.
Which is so dumb,
Well-
you know, because it's like the Emperor of mankind. Like,
Right.
Can he talk? He can't talk. Huh?
No, he can't speak to
He-
anybody
he can-
except he can kind of fuck with Gilliman a little bit.
he can communicate through the Emperor's tarot. And apparently
Some of the custodes,
One of
kind
the
like hear him in
custodes.
his dreams or something.
yeah.
Oh, okay. They're wet dreams.
I mean, it's the Emperor.
Yeah.
There's only two people recently
so
in lore
fucking
who have talked to the Emperor, and they were both in the room together with the Emperor and no one else was there. So whether or not they're full of shit or it actually happened is
Although,
up to interpretation.
if I remember correct, didn't the Emperor have like a little like one or two line conversation with Mortarion while he was possessing Gilliman?
Yeah. Right. But again, there were
And
only
he was
like
like,
2 or 3
"You could
people.
be redeemed, but you're a bitch."
And then Morty cried.
And then Nurgle was like, "You're coming home now."
It's just like, no.
There were only 2 people in the room when that conversation happened. So did it
Right.
happen or no?
Yeah.
Anyway, they're playing with that a lot right now, which is
Mhm.
fun. So you were saying being named War Master.
Yeah, that's a huge responsibility. And then, that begins the crusade, which is then backed by what is a really strange organization that only Warhammer would come up with something so useless, which is, the Administratum, as the bureaucracy of the Imperium is ever present in everything, then created their, kind of departments within the Imperial Guard.
That's
No.
where the Sisters of Battle lie, right? That's
No,
under
no,
the
no.
umbrella of them? No?
No, this
No,
is
they're under the umbrella of the ecclesiarchy.
Ecclesiarchy.
yeah, they're
sorry.
under the church.
Gotcha.
This is the administration, the
This is
paper
the
pushers.
politics. Okay.
The
Yeah.
paper
So
pushers.
there's 4 big
Admin.
organizations at the
Yes,
top.
this is
There's the Administratum. There's the Adaptus Astartes. There's the
Okay.
ecclesiarchy. And then they're at
this
the
one is
top,
lacking the extras.
but nobody talks about them. The Inquisition. The Inquisition is the other that
What's
that
the
is part of the Big Four.
Militarum Vendorum? Is that like the people who sell sodas?
No, actually, I'd have to look into that. I don't
Yeah.
even look into that one.
It's the ASB.
That's what
of-
it is now.
Nobody talks
it's
about
the,
that one.
It's the part of the Militarum that just goes around refilling vending machines. 100%.
It's probably
so-
something to
that's
do with
canon.
merchants and mercantile.
Oh, maybe it's like a merchant marine.
Yeah.
So you were getting into the Departamento Militarum, right?
Militarum, which is the supply clerks.
Yeah, munitions.
This is every time you want to go to the armory and you want to get magazines, this is the guy you got to talk to.
What is it again?
Departamento Militarum.
Okay, so this is the armory.
The Department of Munitions, essentially.
Okay.
Logistics personnel and paper pushers.
Yep. And they slip their spindly little fingers into like the most basic levels of operation of the Imperial Guard. And they farm a lot of
got a lot of control.
It's dumb. So there's this super great quote I pulled from Gonskos. I stripped a lot out to try to streamline it a little bit. This one is the first one here is Gonskos, and this has to do strictly with the kind of relationship between Guard personnel and the Department of Militarum personnel. I'm sure we've all had a conversation like this in some capacity in our lives.
Here's the thing, said Varl, tapping the weapon's ammunition slot. That's a size 3 power port. Takes size 3 power cells. They can be short, long, sickle patterned, box, form, or drum, but they have to be size 3 or they won't fit. Size 3, 30 mil with a back slant lock. With me so far? The clerk shrugged. Varl took a power clip from his musset bag and slid it across the counter. You've issued my company size 5s. Size 5s, you see? They're 34 mil and flat fronted. You can tell they're not 3s just by looking at the size of them. But if you're in any doubt, the Fething Great 5 stenciled on the side is a handy guide. The clerk picked up the clip and looked at it. We were instructed to issue ammunition, 800 boxes, standard pattern. Standard size 3, said Varl patiently. That's standard size 5. Standard pattern, they've said. I've got that in the docket. I'm sure you have. And the 10th first and only have gotten boxes and boxes of ammo that they can't use. It said standard pattern. Varl sighed. Everything's standard pattern. This is the Imperial Fething Guard. Standard pattern boots, standard pattern mess tins, standard pattern body bags. I'm standard pattern infantryman, and you're a standard pattern no neck. Any minute now, my standard pattern fist is going to smack your nose bone back into your very substandard pattern brain.
No neck, no nipple having, back fat off.
And it's just, I every time I read that, like, because it gets posted every now and then, Imperial Guard is one of like the best little.
That's pretty good.
Little snippets, and it's just, I mean, I'm sure you had one of those.
Yeah. I don't know if you guys have listened to it, but in I Love Bees, there's an entire argument with one of the like CIA operatives and somebody who in the administration offices of Earth. And the guy's trying to get information on the fall of Reach because he knows that Reach has fallen. He's trying to trap somebody in the Halo government.
Like UNSC government?
Yeah, to admit it. And he keeps coming back to this, but I have a receipt. And it's very important that somebody wrote him a receipt. And that's what he keeps using to like try to break this person down. And that very much read like that.
You can't argue it. No,
exactly.
You did great. Yeah, that was a great job.
There was a Marine when I was working on base that was getting out. And whatever supply clerk had issued him his flak jacket had fucked up the checkbox. And he said it was desert when it was woodland. And so when he went to return it, he's like, the serial number matches.
Yeah.
And the guy's like, yeah, but it says here that it's supposed to be desert.
Yeah, but this doesn't exist. So
it said it was the biggest pain in the ass.
Oh, yeah. Supply, man.
Oh, yeah. I mean, when we, as a modern civilization, generate the size of supply lines we do, and shit gets lost all the time. There are stories of pallets going missing, and like that pallet, not pallet, like container from a container
like whole
ship,
shipping containers.
An entire shipping container goes missing, and it goes missing because it wasn't documented right. And when it shows back up, people, and I've heard this at my current job, people are like, well, what do we do with this entire container? It's not in inventory.
It's already been written off as a loss somewhere.
It doesn't physically exist. What do we do with it?
And I'm like,
take it home.
I mean, I heard stories that UPS workers take things home sometimes.
Well, yeah.
Well, it's like a box breaks open and shatters 99% of the things in the box, but the one item that's good, that the whole box is insured. So that whole box is getting paid for by insurance.
The absolute worst. I had a friend who worked for a furniture store at one point. We all worked at the mall, so we all kind of hung out together. And they would get like Waterford crystal, and every once in a while it would be chipped. Yeah. And you can't throw it away because if you throw it away whole, somebody can pull it out of the garbage and then return it. So you have to
it's
break
got
it.
a mark on it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So you have to break it. Have you ever tried to break crystal? I remember us
really
hitting
hard.
this thing with a sledgehammer, and not only would it not break, but your ears would be like, I'm bleeding. I'm bleeding. I'm done. This is awful.
Yeah.
I had a bunch of like glass panes that I had to break.
Oh,
My
yeah.
dumbass, I was like, well, I put them in this box and I break them, I could fit more in there.
Oh, God.
I didn't think about how much they weighed.
And they're so heavy.
They are
Yeah.
so heavy.
It's ridiculous.
I was like, I couldn't move the box, and it was just this thing of glass shards.
that was
like,
something I learned working in the window industry that was like, dude, glass is heavy
Yeah.
when you get enough of it.
Yeah,
Cardboard
It doesn't
is heavy
take a
when you
lot.
get enough of
Dude,
it.
oh yeah. I took my entire car to cardboard recycling the other day. It was top to bottom. And I was like, man, this is pretty heavy when you get the whole car of it.
Oh, yeah, man.
So that's the Departmentum Munitorum. And that's the very frustrating aspect of any warfare now is logistics, because everything needs supply. Fuel,
Now
munitions,
multiply it.
food, all of that is very important. What was it? Some general said an army marches on its stomach. Now it's gasoline and its stomach.
Promethium. Come on, man.
Promethium, yes, Promethium, blessed Promethium.
What else do you got for us in the
So-
command structure?
Now that we've kind of broken it down as far as we have, zoomed in a little bit, now you start to see some of the first level variations. You'll have kind of the designated purpose of these units. You'll have armor regiments, artillery regiments, airborne, mechanized, foot, things like that. Kind of the generalist purpose of these units. There's different kinds of armor, light armor brigades, things like that, heavy armor divisions. There's light infantry, heavy infantry, airborne is kind of its own separate thing. So I kind of broke it down here so we can go over each one of these kind of as their own separate unit, because they all function slightly differently, primarily use different equipment that is very staple to the Imperial Guard. Kind of the iconic things about each one. The good old tanks, starting alphabetically here with the armor regiment, generally broken into squadrons is what they like to call their Leman Russ groupings. So it's Leman Russ battle tanks led by a company commander of said tanks. Generally, they are fighting from the front. Tank commanders are expected to lead in their battle tanks. Maybe more from the back of their grouping, but they are on the front
But they're
lines.
still on the line.
Tank commanders don't get to sit in a bunker and order their tanks around.
Gotcha.
They are expected to still be on the tank line.
Now, this could also consist of like Bane blades and stuff too, right? It's not
Right.
just Leman Russes.
Right. This is the typical armor regiment, just has Leman Russes.
Oh,
and,
okay.
And similar, other armored vehicles to work in conjunction.
Right.
But the primary kind of
The backbone of it is Leman Russes.
is
essentially, right?
yeah, the idea of an armor company is like a fist. There's other things that support it. And then so after that, then, what sits in the back? We've got artillery, which are generally broken into batteries with a company commander or master of ordnance. And they are stationed typically far enough from the front lines, because artillery for the Imperial Guard have massive ranges. And you can actually kind of see that on tabletop, where everything else, couple 30 inches, 48 inches, some of the longest stuff.
125 inches.
You get to
Unnecessary amount of
you get to the basilisk, which is just supposed to be like the standard artillery piece for the Imperial Guard, and you're at like 240 inches.
Yeah,
It's dumb.
unnecessary. amount
Like
of
I can
range.
hit you on
Yeah.
another continent, essentially.
Yeah.
It's unnecessarily long ranges. So they're stationed so far back that they kind of just get their report. They're like, oh, okay, today's bombardment coordinates and commence. And then they shoot. It's like playing Battleship. E4, fire.
Big ass titties.
Wait a minute. What did that guy shout right before his radio went dead? I don't know. I think he was saying danger clothing. I don't know what danger clothing
I don't know what
are.
danger
Saying
clothing
Rodney
is.
Dangerfield. It's fine.
Yeah, it's fine. And as there's a lot of even this tension also in modern militaries between frontline units and artillery. And there's this super great little section. I can read this one rather quick.
This is from 15 hours.
This is from 15 hours, which is the average life expectancy
Okay.
of a guardsman.
okay. there
Like
you go.
considering dropped onto a front line, they're expected to live 15 hours.
That's
in
pretty good,
combat.
man.
15 hours in combat, like of frontline duty. Little context. They were fighting orcs. They requested an artillery barrage. Command was like, nah, we don't know if this is a real orc attack or if it's just like them messing with you guys. And then
You're like,
later
what-
on,
does
after
that
It
matter?
could be a play
Yeah.
attack. It may not be a
Hold
real
up, command.
attack.
Hold up, command.
legitimately,
Say again?
that was their thing. Is we're not sure if this is a real attack or just a feint. Was command's words to them.
Look,
So
so
then
let's
you're
fuck
cut-
about a bit.
Yeah, command. Hold up, you're coming in bullshit. Can you say again?
So then, shortly after that, they fight off a bunch of orcs. And then they're like, okay, we survived. Cool. And then, a little bit later, man, that sounds a lot like artillery. So then began the mad dash into the bunker because they had lines dug. So they ran into their bunker and they were like, obviously they were going to radio somebody. So when they get in there, this conversation's going down. And this is between their radio man and then eventually somebody else takes the radio from him to put a little more gusto into the conversation. So it starts out from the artillery company perspective and then it switches back. Then noticing his men looking towards him with expectant faces as they awaited the order to fire, Moran made his elaborate show of taking his pocket chronometer from its chain and opening it to check the time. 16:30 hours exactly, he thought with a smile, hand going to the comm stud at the collar of his uniform as he made ready to vox the command to the Sergeant Dumont to give the order to let loose the guns. Time to give their orcs the daily dose of hell. So that was the artillery position. They're just doing their job. And then over on the front line, holding a pair of headphones to his ear with one hand while pressing down the send button of the Vox horn before him with the other. Yes, I understand that, Captain, the corporal said, talking into the Voxcom. But regardless of what your situation maps may say, I assure you we are still in possession of Sector 113. Yes, Captain, I know you have your orders, said Corporal Grishin nearby, still talking into the Voxcom before pausing to listen to the reply through his headphones. The corporal began once more. Yes, I realize that, Captain, and you are right. The guardsman's first duty is obedience. But even granting that you have your orders and it is your duty to obey them, if those orders are mistaken, pause. No, of course, you're right, sir. The divinely ordained command structure of the Imperial Guard precludes any possibility of your orders being mistaken. If I may rephrase myself, however, what I really meant to say, of course, was that perhaps the problem here lies not in the orders themselves, but in the practical aspects of their execution. Another pause. Oh, no, sir. I wasn't for a moment questioning your competence. Another moment. Yes, sir, as you say, your battery runs like a well-oiled machine, but you must concede that seeing as how we are unquestionably under bombardment, a mistake must have been occurred somewhere. Another pause. Yes, of course. You concede nothing. Yes, I understand. No, sir, you are correct. General Headquarters is not known for promoting fools to the rank of captain. Naturally, you are right. If there is a mistake here, it is ours for being present in a sector scheduled for bombardment. But if you will excuse me for a moment, my company commander has just entered the room. Perhaps it will be better if you and he discuss this matter directly.
It's like what I really meant to say was literally turn around and go literally fuck yourself.
What I want
we
you
are
to
being
do.
bombarded.
That's the captain walking in.
The captain grabs the radio, obviously, because he is pissed. I think one of his men actually got killed on the way in, and so he's extra mad. Well, I have a message for you, Captain. No, I am well aware you outrank me, but you will listen to what I have to say all the same. I am giving you 2 minutes, Captain. And if this bombardment hasn't ended by then, I'm going to come over to whatever hole you're hiding in and kick you up the ass. The ass kicking will only be for my own amusement. After that, I fully intend to put a shotgun blast through your skull. Have I made myself clear? There was another pause while Chelkar listened to the captain's reply on his headphones. No, it is you who do not understand the situation, Captain. I don't give a damn about your rank or your orders, nor do I care if you report me to the commissariat. In fact, please feel free to do so. If nothing else, they can serve as pallbearers at your funeral. What you fail to understand is that even if you have me arrested, there is an entire regiment of men standing around me who are quite prepared to make good on my threat. And if you think the commissariat will be willing to arrest an entire frontline combat unit to save you, I think you overestimate your own value to the war effort of this city. Oh, and by the way, Captain, the chronometer is counting down. You now only have 1 minute and 20 seconds to make a decision.
That's pretty great.
That's another great one that I thought very much. It's one of those back and forths where the one dude's doing his job and the other dude's doing his job and they don't cooperate well.
And they're not meshing at all.
Yeah, they're not meshing.
Because again, there's some dude in orbit of that planet in the lap of luxury who drew up all of these plans last night after getting hammered on AMSIC.
Yeah, pretty much.
AMSIC.
Fucking wasted.
And it's a nice, like, how he specifically says, like, that the artillery commander is hiding, even though that's just his job. But frontline troops always are gonna think that the Pogues.
Well, if you're getting fucking bombarded by the homies, dude, you gotta be
friendly fire isn't friendly.
Yeah,
bombarded by the homies.
I mean, true story.
So you're not gonna be like, hey, man, your rounds downrange, they're hitting me.
You're gonna be like, yo, danger fucking close.
Yeah, you're gonna be like, hey, motherfucker, pull your head out of your ass.
Yeah.
Stop blowing me the fuck up.
Can you stop peeing on my shoes, please? I know you're peeing on my shoes because I'm standing here. Stop it.
The other thing that this kind of situation highlights is even the drastic differences in the life of a frontline soldier.
Yeah.
Who is like in the shit. And then you have even at just the artillery base, which is still fairly front-ish lines. That dude's all, oh, look at what time it is. It is bombardment time. Everything by the book and the schedule. And he sees war as a very calculated mathematical thing, whereas the frontline troopers are like, no, we're in the shit.
Well, I mean, it's something like incredibly English.
It's very English. That whole image, I imagine his other hand has a teacup, and if it doesn't, there is a butler behind him because holding his teacup.
There's literally a record in World War II. A pilot crash landed. Like, he came back to the airfield, he made it, landed, and he ended up going off the runway into the grass of the dispersal area.
Yeah.
And the flight officer's coming in, and he's like, Lieutenant, why is your airplane on my grass? He's like, oh, I'm sorry, sir, my controls. He's like, I don't give a damn about your controls. This is England. Stay off the grass. And he literally said that. It's just Jack Churchill. Jack Churchill stormed the beach at Juno with a sword.
Yeah.
And he said straight up, any officer not carrying a sword into battle is improperly dressed.
That's about as British as it gets.
I was like, super Brits, dude.
It's like the tea kettle in the Challenger.
Yeah. Yes,
exactly. It's the only tank with a tea kettle.
Mm-hmm.
These next guys were sadly legends, but still are a very cool part of the lore.
Favorite.
Still a very cool bit of the lore.
The Elysians?
The airborne troops in general. Specifically, the Elysians are the named one. There are some others. There are actually airborne divisions of Cadians and other armies as well.
It used to be one of the, back in, I don't know, maybe 5th or 6th, whenever they introduced the first, and it was only Guard and Space Marines that got it back then, but you could pick a couple of different traits which defined your army. You could make your
drop
army.
Troops was
drop troops is one of them. I think and also Tempestus Scions can operate as airborne troops. Sometimes they are mechanized instead, or just foot in some cases. But they are deployed. It's typically infantry. There are some light vehicles that they bring with them, but typically it's anything that can be deployed via a Valkyrie or similar of that nature, which are on loan from the sub-department of the Navy known as the Aeronautica Imperialis, and they are actually in charge of all aircraft, all not voidcraft aircraft. So atmospheric.
So this is straight up Air Force.
This is the Air Force, which is a sub-department of the Navy, not connected to the Astra Militarum, technically.
Oh, okay.
They are on loan. All the Valkyries are on loan. They are not even a Cadian painted Valkyrie is only painted Cadian as long as it's serving in that regiment.
Oh.
As soon as it's deployed to another war zone, fresh coat of paint.
Huh.
Yeah,
but the pilots and the ground crews are attached to that plane, and they go with them.
Yeah, it's the same thing as the Marines. That's what Marine stands for. My ass rides the Navy equipment.
Yeah.
Yeah. Just suck it, Space Marines.
Right.
Nah, Space Marines have their own Navy. Well, it's not really a Navy.
That's
anyway,
true. They do.
Space
have
Marines
their
are
own,
different.
They have
Space
their
Marines
own.
are different.
So, anyways,
Mary Sue's are Mary Sue. We'll deal with Mary Sue when we get to their episode.
Yeah. So, and that's because, like we said, the Imperial Army and Navy and everything was scattered into a bunch of pieces, self-dismembered, kind of in a way, and but they still do interact, and that was just their solution to, well, the Army shouldn't have an Air Force, but we still need to have planes. So they just made their own department. And they're like, okay, you assign aircraft to a theater of operations and they operate there.
Makes sense.
Or attached to a regiment or things of that nature. And then they are assigned at high command's will, kind of around. You can request air assets, things like that, but in from command perspective. But in general, it's kind of you don't really get control over that.
Mm.
Well, that's how it was right after World War I.
Mm-hmm.
And
World War
that's
I,
why
all Air Force was property of the
entirely.
Army, and then they detached, and then all air assets were property of the Air Corps. There were two different departments. There was the Army, and then there was the Air Corps, and they did not like anything. It was one or the other.
And now we have
Air
the Space Force.
Yeah.
Space Force.
As dumb as it is, I think was the right move. It's just the publicity behind it was terribly wrong.
I need a potato and a tinfoil hat. That's all I gotta say.
Dude, I love that guy.
Dude's awesome.
I love that guy.
But yeah, so those, because of
that's-
the limitations of planes, they get dropped in and they carry lighter weapons and less vehicle assets. So then
And that's actually one of the reasons that I set that sixth company in the Imperial Guard that we talked about in
Right.
the last
Was the
episode is
airborne company.
just air.
Sony should.
So then
sponsor us.
moving into the opposite kind of force, we have mechanized. These are like the Steel Legion operate this way. And they're comprised similar to like a modern mechanized infantry, which
But
so
they're
you
not-
have-
But they're different from armored.
right. They're different from armored.
Okay.
Armored, it focuses on the tanks being
Tanks.
the heavy lifters. Mechanized groups are there to exploit gaps in enemy formations and lines.
armored personnel carriers.
Yeah, using armored personnel carriers. There's also kind of another version of mechanized, which can be referred to as motorized infantry, which fight in a way similar to the original horse-mounted dragoons,
Yeah.
which
Cav.
were meant to ride to an area of combat, dismount, and then fight on foot.
Right.
So there's two kind of options, like in the Imperial Guard. So if they're using chimeras, those
Where
are
do
better.
Sentinels fall?
Sentinels are considered kind of like a light tank or a scout vehicle.
Okay.
They kind of are just there to support other, armored assets in some way.
Gotcha.
So they would a
Okay.
mechanized
So they're
infantry
armored.
force would also have some sentinels, to be there. They're used very much as an infantry support role as well.
Okay.
But a chimera being naturally more of like a battle box is useful for, blitzkrieg assault type mechanized infantry assaults, whereas a Taurox is more like a utility truck, not as armored, not as armed, would then be used to ferry troops from one point to another rapidly, and then they dismount and fight on foot.
Got you.
Because, once you get the orcs to rout, in one area, you kill their war boss, they all start running away. It's way better if you can keep up with their retreat and keep shooting them. So you'll need something fast to do that kind of things. Foot are never going to keep up with that kind of scale. Oh, especially over the distances that, these wars are fought.
Got
It'd
you.
be one thing for infantry to run one trench to the next, chasing the enemy. But try doing that continuously for an hour.
Got you.
You'll need a truck to keep up.
What else we got?
Then we get back to regular foot old infantry.
Foot infantry.
Yeah. The mud crunching, boot wearing,
Dude.
get the shittiest end of the stick all the time. Crayon eaters.
Not
Crayon eaters.
not every infantry. No, wait. Not every guardsman is an infantryman, but every guardsman is. There's a way to say this.
In the Guard, we prefer general neutral terms like dead and cannon fodder.
And infantryman.
Yeah. Conscript and cannon fodder.
Meat.
Meat.
Meat popsicle.
-5 meat popsicle. So yeah, and
So this is all the core of the army.
yeah, this is what, when you think of, a parade army marching through the street with just big blocks of infantry, that's a foot regiment. That's what they do. They have men. You put them on a line somewhere and they stand around and they point their guns in one direction.
I'd love to see like how comfortable guardsman boots are. Like they have to be fucking like year 40,000.
No, the SDC
Hold
that
up.
exists is from 2020.
Don't do that to me, Ryan.
Think about it this way.
Don't do that to me, Ryan.
The life expectancy of a guardsman is 15 hours. That means their boots probably fall apart after 20 hours.
You ain't got no time for blisters.
Yeah,
You ain't got no time.
if the guy's not going to last long enough to need fancy boots, he doesn't get fancy boots.
I'm pretty
and then-
sure in the Gaunt's Ghosts series, there's actually a guy who goes around taking boots from dead people.
I think I remember that. Yeah, he takes dead boots because he's like, well, they're newer boots than mine.
He's like, we don't know when we're going to get new boots. Get them now.
Yeah, and
Makes sense.
yeah. So, and in foot, like I said earlier, there's light infantry, there's heavy infantry. So that's, that ranges. Gaunt's Ghosts are considered light infantry. They're specialized in reconnaissance and that kind of mission. They obviously have been put through the ringer. Obviously, that's why there's books. and they fight on the front line, but their unit itself was never originally intended for that purpose. So they have camo cloaks. Mm-hmm. They have, their training is more about reconnaissance and that kind of thing.
So there isn't actually a reconnaissance regiment.
They're not.
There's just like part of regiments.
They're basically just listed as light infantry. Like when a clerk in the administration or a commander is looking, and they're like, okay, this is the front line. This is the flank. These are all the troops available. Okay, so I'm going to put my light infantry
unit kind of thing
on the flank, and I'll put my heavy infantry, my line infantry, if you would, to go back to Napoleonic terms, they would have line infantry and light infantry. Gotcha. Line infantry are all the redcoats that stood shoulder to shoulder and died. And the light infantry are basically like the guys that go hide in the bushes and try to pick off the officers.
Okay.
So the way that Tanith works, or the reason that Tanith works the way it does, is their planet, the planet that they're from, which no longer exists, is basically entirely covered in like ant herds. If you're familiar with the Tolkien universe,
I figure we can go over exactly why they are the way they are in their kind of section of the lore episode. But they come from a planet that naturally raises better navigators just by nature. By living on that planet, you come out with a good sex direction. That we'll leave it at that for now. So that's why they're tasked with that. And that's why some of these other ones are the way they are. Their planets naturally kind of evolved their populations into being better at certain things.
Right.
So then the administration obviously is going to play them to their strengths.
Right.
So yeah, and then there's like heavy infantry, which are the more stormtrooper-y types. They're I can't remember exactly what the name of them is, but there's one Imperial Guard regiment that Gaunt's Ghost works with that's wearing carapace armor, and it can actually change colors from silver to black.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, at the push of a button. It's super cool because they're like a super noble lineage.
That's dope.
And so they have their ceremonial battle armor.
Yeah.
And then when it comes down to like, oh, it's time to get down and dirty, they're like,
make it back black.
So that they can't be seen. Like they're less shiny. Yeah, it's pretty cool.
So how's the command structure work?
So all of these still are sharing kind of a similar, like I said, they're led by company commander, whether it be an infantry company commander or a tank company commander. Often a colonel is the equivalent rank for someone leading. Gaunt is his full title, Colonel Commissar.
Which is a special
is a very, very special thing. And it only happened because, like we mentioned earlier, war masters have an immense power within their crusade. He was just a commissar, but he was a really good one. And he was very good at tactics and things. So the previous war master was like, my dying wish is you get to be the new war master and you get to be an officer.
Yeah.
And then he died. And everybody was like, you got to be fucking kidding me.
A lot of that goes. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
And a lot of that goes to the idea that like Gaunt is not a stereotypical commissar. And we kind of briefly mentioned it earlier. Most commissars are gonna literally do the job as entailed, which is look for rebellion, look for chaos taint, and eliminate with extreme prejudice.
Rules is written versus rules is intended.
Yeah, and Gaunt is very a rules is intended guy.
Okay.
Yeah. As a commissar is going to shoot first, reload, continue shooting, reload, continue shooting, then take a break, and then maybe a couple of years later go, maybe I shouldn't have done that.
Whereas, and
think
Gaunt
of
was
the children.
Gaunt was put in a position where he already had more care for men under his kind of direct jurisdiction than other commissars. But once he became a colonel and was given actual men like on paper as his responsibility, like, oh, these guys all have names, like, and they matter to him at that point.
Yeah.
So
everything you covered from armored to foot infantry, these are all examples of company structure. Right. And then these companies would be underneath a regiment. And then the regiment would be part of Ministrorum Regimentos.
Yeah.
Is that how you pronounce that? And then that is actually all of the regiments that might be raised by this solar system or this planet.
It's like a circle.
Yeah.
It's like a pyramid. It's like a pyramid.
Circle.
It's like a pyramid.
It's like a pyramid. Yeah.
But it's like a circle. It's love.
So
it's like
within
circles.
It's love. It's like a circle.
Like as an example in the codex here, it shows you the Acadian 24th Armored Regiment, Emperor's Thunder, is led by a command company, which is a Leman Russ and a Chimera.
So that's first company.
Yeah, that would be like their first company. And then that would be backed by what is actually called first company, then second company, third company.
It'd be like
which are each led by a tank commander and then composed of multiple tank squadrons.
Mm-hmm.
And then, supporting other elements. at will, or bane blades, things like that. And then infantry is very much the same way. You've got your company commander and his command squad. Then you have your infantry companies, which are platoons and so forth.
With your commanders and sergeants.
Right, led by your sergeants.
There's a lot of regiments, and you can make your own regiments. And obviously what we're working towards as we introduce you guys to lore and talk about a lot of these subjects is giving you enough lore and enough basis to take that creative writing process and make your own regiment. We'll get into regiments and the different cultures, as well as the accolades that they've got, the planets they come from, how their fighting tactics work here in an upcoming episode. For our next episode, we're going to jump into the history of the Astra Militarum. There is quite a bit of history, quite a bit of it weaves in and out of the earlier eras that we talked about. We'll kind of just touch it in brief because we definitely, as a group, have a desire to do like focused episodes on cool battles like the First War of Armageddon or the 13th Black Crusade are definitely things that you guys will hear us mention. And then at some point we'll dive deep into them because they're super fun. But yeah, that will wrap it up for this first part of our Astra Militarum series. Let us know what you guys think we left out. Let us know the ideas that you guys have for your own lore, and or share your existing Imperial Guard or Astra Militarum lore with us at either underthehiveofmadness@gmail.com or grimdarkgaming@gmail.com. You can also join us and become part of our growing community on Discord. Discord's a pretty great place. I know all you guys, we all enjoy it. We all enjoy Discord for different reasons.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's pretty much the best way to keep in constant contact. I mean, we're all on there pretty much every day.
Yeah. Yep. We do a lot more than just Warhammer 40k too. There's a little bit of various hobbies. Lots of crafting stuff gets talked about.
Lots of games.
Mm-hmm, lots of other games.
I've seen things I don't want to see.
Meme chat.
All the memes, man. All the memes.
It's a dark place.
The other way that you guys can interact with us and support us, and this actually connects into our Discord, is by joining us on Patreon. That's patreon.com/underthehiveofmadness. It does take a little bit of time in research, pre-production, post-production, and just us doing the episodes here to kind of get everything laid out and made into a semi-competent radio show. We definitely do appreciate any help you guys can toss to us over there on patreon.com. One of the big things that you get access to at our $3 level, we have a $3, a $6, and a $9 level currently, but one of the things that you get access to at just $3 is our painting contests, which we do quarterly. We are in our second one, and by the time this episode drops, you'll have just a couple of days to get a submission in for that if you are interested. You also get access to video podcasts at the $3 level. At the $6 level, we do swag a couple of times a year. We just got done doing a swag level, but we do a couple of them a year. And we also do some things like ask you guys where you want to see the future of the podcast go. Do you want to see a certain series next? Do you have some questions we didn't answer? Or we haven't done one of these in a while. We actually do segments or episodes where we just ask a bunch of questions and of our patrons, and then we answer them. We'll probably do one coming up here soon. At the $9 level, you get access to some art assets, so you can go out and print yourself some objective modifiers. We provide the PDF art asset, and then you would use that to go order your custom objective modifiers. Marker. And we're working on marker, not modifier. Thank you. And then we are also working on some other stuff, some wallpapers and some other assets that you guys can get access to. You also get an idea of like kind of the general art stuff that I'm developing, whether it be for stickers or something else. On other news, we also do have stickers now, and we are trying to figure out how we might make those available as far as like a merch situation might go. So if you wanted to buy a sticker pack, we're just trying to figure out how we're going to do that. The reality of stuff like that is logistics. Even though the sticker, even though the sticker itself may not be the most expensive thing, sometimes shipping it can be weird. Lastly, if you guys just want to support us in general and you're not at a place or a position where you want to be part of Patreon, we totally understand it. Please give us a like, a subscribe, give us some star ratings, write us a review, anything you can do on any of the various podcast networks that just kind of help us stand out in the algorithm and get a little bit further out. You done dying there?
Yeah.
God bless you. Gesundheit. But yeah, that stuff definitely helps. We are growing a pretty amazing community, and we want to see it continue to grow. So getting the word out about what we do always helps. And again, our primary goal here is to discuss and talk about lore. Mark, you need to wake the camera up. Our primary goal here is to discuss and talk about the lore, but it's from a perspective of how do you write and how do you cooperatively tell stories. And the only way that we can really do that is if we're all engaging in cooperatively telling the story with one another. Well, it's something about ending the episode.
That about wraps it up.
That about wraps it up today for 665.66 UHMR Chemrat Radio. Thank you for coming along with us on the Pirate Vox channels as we surf and get away with as much as we can before the Arbites or the Inquisition find us. Although I don't really think they care. I think we're kind of small potatoes. I don't know about you.
No, they're definitely looking for us.
They're definitely looking for us.
They're definitely looking.
That's good. That's good. Bringing you, dude.
Kevin's a baked potato.
Twice baked.
Twice baked. Always bringing you the truth from the lowest portion of the sump to the highest portion of the spire. That's been it for us. Remember, four-armed emperor maulings don't just happen. You trip, motherfucker.
I'm